Welcome to Texas Highway Products Tutorial 124. This tutorial will investigate negative phases and overlaps. MaxTime now has negative phases, so this will give you a little application of how they're used. The definition of a negative phase and an overlap is if the overlap is not running, the negative phase is green or next, it will inhibit the overlap from starting. But if the overlap is already running, the negative phase will not terminate or omit the overlap or force it off. So the first step in our example will be to create some alternate sequences. Because I've loaded an 8-phase default database, we have our standard sequence. But I've now went in and created sequence 2, where I've reversed phases 2 and 1. So now in this sequence, it will run 2 and 5, 2 and 6, and then 1 and 6. So this will give me some different phase orders. I'm going to go to sequence 3 and reverse 5 and 6 to help with this little example that we're putting together. So now that we have our alternate sequences squared away, we will create a few overlaps and watch how they run. The second step of the process is to go into the controller and go to overlaps and overlap parameters. I'm going to set up 2 overlaps. When I click on this, I'm going to set up overlap 1 to be a flashing yellow arrow. And I'm going to have an included phase of 2 and a modifier phase of 1 and a negative phase of 5. So if phase 2 is on and 5 is off, it will flash unless phase 5 is next or on. So in our lead lag situation, we can inhibit this flashing yellow arrow. I'm going to go down and create a second one of 6 and 5 with a negative phase of 1 to do the reverse side. I've opened up 2 windows and stacked them on top of each other so you can see the overlap status at the bottom and the phases at the top. Notice that it's running sequence 1, which is our standard 8-phase quad sequence, and we're in 3 and 4, 4 and 8, and the overlaps are red. So when we come over to 1 and 5, the overlaps go dark because we have the green arrows are on. And when they terminate and we go to 2 and 6, you will notice that the overlaps will start flashing. So we get our flashing yellow overlap. And this is our standard way we've always done flashing yellow arrows. But now we're going to go in and try the other sequence and see what the operation looks like. So now I've gone in and I'm going to go select sequence 2. So sequence 2 is now running up here at the top. You can see where it is. So in sequence 2, we reversed phases 1 and 2. So it's going to be running 2, 1. And we'll wait for it to kind of come around and see what it looks like. So we're in 3 and 7. We're going to go to 4 and 8. And from 4 and 8, we're going to go to 2 and 5. And because we have a 5 as a negative phase, it's going to inhibit that flashing yellow arrow from starting until it gets 2, 2, and 6. So the leading flashing yellow arrow is not going to be on. We're now in 2 and 6, and we have both flashing yellow arrows on. We terminate 2, and one of the flashing yellow arrows goes away because 2 is no longer on, and the lagging flashing yellow arrow is working. So if I did not have that, we can look at it the other way. Now I've gone in and I've selected sequence 3, where I've reversed phases 5 and 6. So in this case, it's going to come up and run 1 and 6, 2 and 6, and then 2 and 5. So in this case, it's going to be the leading flashing yellow arrow is going to be inhibited. So we're going to wait until it goes across the barrier to 3 and 7, 4 and 8. And when it comes up in 1 and 6, that second overlap will be inhibited. And it will not start until we get into the 2-6 movement. So right now we're in 1 and 6. There's no overlap on. We terminate 1 and go to 2 and 6. And we bring both flashing yellow arrows on. And as we terminate to go into the lagging section of this sequence, it goes back to one flashing yellow arrow. So we're only inhibiting the leading flashing yellow arrow. Now, just to prove our point, what we're going to do is we're going to continue to run sequence 3, but I am going to go back to my overlaps and I'm going to remove the negative phase. So when I remove the negative phase, the leading flashing yellow arrow will come on as soon as we leave 4 and 8. So hit save on that. We'll take a little bit, and then we're going to go back to our status screen. So there's our ring timer status. We'll bring up our overlaps, so we're kind of adjusted. We want to go around. We want to cross the barrier and come back to get everything working, so let's read that phases in the right order. So we'll simply clear this movement, and when we leave 2 and 5, we'll go to 3 and 7, then we'll go to 4 and 8, and then we'll bring up that flashing yellow arrow as soon as 1 and 6 starts. Of course, it will only be the second one because 6 is on, not 2. So we're leaving 4 and 8. Notice down here at the bottom, the leading flashing arrow is flashing right now before we started 2 and 6, which would be the way it would operate without the negative phase. So negative phases can be kind of handy for holding them, keeping an overlap from starting with a conflicting phase. Thank you for watching this tutorial with me. Hope to see you next tutorial.